wicked, vicious faith. And I think he was being charged, he had been charged, as a result of a BBC operation against him. And there was the trial on the Queen's Crown Court. Some of us may remember that. It was in the latter part of 2005. Now, I was a Conservative district councillor at that time for South Holland District Council, and I had been voted by the Conservatives and by the Independents, sort of Labour, but they wouldn't say they were Labour, because it was a Conservative area. Not only people on our side who were sometimes scared of flying the colours. I had been voted by the Conservatives and the Independents to represent the council on the Lincolnshire Council for Racial Equality. And it was my privilege to go up to the Lincolnshire Council for Racial Equality and represent the views of my constituents. Well, at that time, Mr. Nick Griffin and Mark Collett were in trouble for exercising the inalienable right of every British person, non-violently and without inciting violence, to express their opinion, and they were in court for it. So I decided that as a Conservative, I ought to go up there and defend their right to say what they felt, and in defending their right to say what they felt, I am also defending my right to say what I feel. Because you can't have censorship in part. It's like a woman. A woman is either pregnant or not. She's not half pregnant. And if you have censorship in part of one party saying what they feel, then you have censorship for everybody. So as a Conservative, I went up to support Mr. Nick Griffin and Mark Collett. And in early 2006, I was invited to the opening of the Huddersfield branch of the British National Party. And I spoke there both with Mr. Griffin and with Jonathan Bowden on the kind of issues that we get concerned about, and the kind of issues that everybody in Britain is very concerned about. And that's how I got involved. Soon after that, the Conservatives were on to me for supporting, they said, another political party, but I wasn't. I was supporting freedom of speech. And so I decided to leave the Conservatives, to leave Cameron's Conservative Party, and I did so on the 14th of May 2006. I left the Conservatives, and as an asylum seeker I fled to the British National Party to be granted asylum, to speak forth according to my conscience. I did that on the 14th of May 2006, and I have not looked back since. The British National Party, I think, is the best instrument that is available if you want to preserve British democracy, British freedom, and the British people themselves. And I think the reasons why the British National Party is the right instrument to do this, I'm going to come to those reasons now. And I think the main reason is due to the British National Party's view on Islam. So I want to talk to you, this is just the introduction, I want to talk to you about the nature of Islam and why we must all be deeply concerned about the character and nature of the beast that we have embraced and brought into Albion. Now, I believe that with the three mainstream parties, the Labour Party, the Liberal Democratic Party, and the Conservative Party, there seems to be amongst these death stream parties a spirit of myopic gas and self-delusion about all the issues that are facing us. And one of the issues that faces us is the nature of Islam. I was interviewed by Radio 4 about 4 years ago by one of these Radio 4 journalists on the character of Islam. And his eyes sort of bulged as he interviewed me, which was quite frightening, I thought. Most people who talk to you, their eyes don't bulge like some alien from another planet. And he said to me, looking at me intently with his eyes bulging, he said to me, but Islam is a religion of peace. And I said, well, no, it isn't. And he looked genuinely surprised. He looked genuinely shocked. And I said, no, Islam means submission. That is the meaning of the word Islam. But it seems that the media and all the people in the main political parties seem to be deluded. They seem to have this fog of delusion over them, that Islam means peace, when in actual fact it means submission. That is literally what it means. And they all seem to be conscripted, as it were, to parrot this word in a recurring fashion, that Islam means peace and there's nothing to fear from the presence of Islam in our midst. It's not unlike the situation where there seems to be a fog around their minds and in their hearts and brains that an invasion scale set of immigration is enriching for us when it clearly is not, and that the common market was somehow simply about economics rather than political union from the start. There seems to be this kind of fog or delusion. And I wonder whether it is the same with Islam. In fact, I'm sure that it is the same with Islam. In the face of the September 11th attacks on New York, 2001, and the London bombings, 2005 and whatever, the politicians keep parroting out this delusion that Islam is peaceful and there is nothing to worry about it. So I want to talk about that issue today. And that's really, out of all that catalogue of issues, that's the issue which I want to buy into for the moment. Now, there are a number of views on Islam, and I think I can classify them as basically three views on Islam, and I'd like to give the fourth view, which is my own analysis, my own diagnosis of the Islamic situation in our country. The first view is this. It's a view that's really put forward by a human rights lawyer. She's a highly expensive human rights lawyer, Sherry Blair. Now, her view of Islam is that Islam is a religion of peace because it is a religion. According to Sherry, religion is all about peace. So Christianity is about peace, all religions are about the same God, and so Islam, for that reason as well, will be peaceful. People like Sherry would say that the suicide bombers were merely misguided young men who hijacked an essentially good religion and used it or abused it to an evil purpose. Much like some people have done the same with Christianity. And at this point, the Crusades would be mentioned, and perhaps the Inquisition, and the provocation that young Muslims have undergone with regard to, say, international affairs and the plight of Palestine, Israel, the Jews and the Zionists. Now that's Sherry Blair's view, I think. She says that Islam is a religion of peace. Why? Well, because it's a religion, and all religions are peaceful. Now, I'm not sure that's a view at all. I think that is simply a blind spot. But I mention it before dismissing it. I think you can simply wipe that view out. She doesn't understand at all, perhaps she doesn't want to understand, the fact that different cultures have different values. She believes in multiculturalism, but she doesn't actually apply it. There are different societies with very different values to our own. Now, the second view of Islam is not that it is peaceful because it's a religion, but it's the kind of you play fair with them, they will play fair with us outlook on different religions. They recognise that it is a religion, of course. They recognise that it has differences to Christianity, and it's not simply a version of Christianity with a towel on your head. But they believe in the goodness of human nature, and they believe that if you play, well, perhaps it's not a very apposite to talk about cricket, but if you play cricket with them, they will certainly play, well, a sort of cricket with you. I think you'll get the illusion there. And that's their view. They think that there's a lot wrong with Western society, and there is a lot wrong with Western society. We're far from perfect, therefore we mustn't judge Islam, and the implication is in that we mustn't recognise the essential nature of Islam and its dangers for us. They would say, well look, we're not perfect, you can't expect the Muslims to be perfect either, but if you treat them well, then everything will end up well. We will all be the same. You treat them well, then everything will end up well. Now I was in the north of England a couple of years ago, and I was staying with another minister of the gospel, Presbyterian minister, and we talked about this issue of Islam, and he had helped a number of Muslims in his area, and he said to me, the trouble with them is you help them, and the next thing is they want you out. So I'd like to now focus on the third view of Islam, and then I'd like to evaluate and explain how we should analyse Islam. Now the third view of Islam is that Islam is a totally evil religion, that it is totally hostile to the West, that it is at war with non-Muslim society, that the Islamic world is the Dar al-Islam, the abode of peace or submission, and that our area of the world is the Dar al-Harb, or the abode of war, and that Muslims will never be happy until they turn Britain into a Muslim majority state under Muslim-dominated Islamic Sharia, Quran, and the Hadiths of the Prophet Muhammad. And indeed there's a lot of surahs in the Quran and in sayings in the Hadiths, that's the traditions of Muhammad, which do indicate that it is the intention, it's the built-in program of Islam to in fact conquer the world by fair means, by foul means, by peaceful means, or by warlike means. Now, there is in fact a lot to be said of this view of Islam, but we have to, I think, take on board a kind of proviso that we have to add to it. Because if any of us have known Muslims, if any of us have interacted with Muslims, females, and there's a big difference between the female and the male, you will understand that there are many Muslims of a good nature, of a balanced temperament, and of a kind of peaceful disposition.